Citizens of the digital cosmos, prepare yourselves for the mind-shattering, earth-quaking season finale of the Outlaw Crypto podcast. Episode 12 is here, and our guest is none other than the indomitable Aaron Day. Yes, the man himself, the author of the explosive book, The Final Countdown. Crypto, gold, silver, and the people's last stand against tyranny by CBDCs. His Daylight Freedom Foundation is on a mission to empower individuals and communities through decentralized financial systems and self-custody solutions. He is calling on all freedom-loving individuals to join the revolution and fight back against the technocratic overlords who seek to enslave us with their digital chains. CBDCs, an imminent threat to our very existence. Aaron's workshops are a clarion call, a rallying cry to protect your financial freedom. Learn, empower, and arm yourselves with cutting-edge insights. Aaron Day is here to expose the insidious plots of the technocrats and their infernal machinery of control. Aaron Day, a multifaceted entrepreneur, investor, advisor, author, and political activist, has spent nearly 3 decades battling the forces of tyranny across various sectors. His foray into political activism began in 2008, driven by the oppressive weight of government regulations like Obamacare and Dodd-Frank. This experience transformed him into a relentless champion of liberty, leading non-profit think tanks, creating the Crony Awards to spotlight government and business collusion, and playing a crucial role in the success of the Free State Project in New Hampshire. The rising threat of CBDCs propelled Aaron to write his best-selling book, The Final Countdown, and launch a 2024 Republican presidential nomination campaign to spotlight the dangers of these digital shackles. Aaron is not just a prominent figure in his professional and political circles, but also a devoted father and grandfather. Join us in episode 12 of the Outlaw Crypto podcast as Aaron Day unleashes the full force of his knowledge and passion. Discover how we can defeat the gangster computer god conspiracy and pave the way for a decentralized future of freedom and prosperity. This is the finale you cannot afford to miss.
We're back with another episode of the Outlaw Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Paranoia Machinery. This is a podcasting 2.0 podcast, which means that you can stream sats, you can boost sats on the Fountain app, and we also accept a variety of privacy coins such as XMR and Wownero. Details are in the description if you want to support the show. Today, my guest is Aaron Day. Aaron is an anti-CBDC freedom activist who is voicing his opinion that we all need to get off the central bank economic system and use financial alternatives such as cryptocurrencies and gold and silver. Aaron, how are you today, man? Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Aaron, I caught you on, 2 different podcasts. I think you went on Monerotopia with Doug Tooman, correct?
Yep.
Which was an epic interview about CBDCs. And then I caught you on another podcast. The name escapes me, but you were talking about Roger Ver's situation in that interview, which was also fascinating. As I understand it, you were just at an Enemies of the State DC event representing Roger Ver's case there. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, this was an event that was held. It wasn't part of the Libertarian National Convention, but it was held at the same venue, obviously targeting the same crowd. And this Enemies of the State event was designed to bring awareness to Ross Ulbricht, Ian Freeman, Snowden, Assange, and Roger Ver. So it was a 3-hour party. I spoke for about 10 minutes, and there's a lot of music and everything, and a lot of just general promoting awareness around these guys, which turned out to be great because the next day Trump talked about potentially pardoning Ross, and I think it actually did do quite a bit to raise awareness to this entire issue. And I actually found that a lot of people are unaware that Roger's in prison in Spain. That was surprising to me how few people were aware of what's going on in Roger's situation.
Do you think that Trump is actually going to follow through with his pardon of Ross Ulbricht?
I mean, I'm skeptical. I've spent a lot of time in politics, and I left politics entirely in 2019. So I exited fiat. I haven't voted since 2018, even though I ran for president to raise awareness about the CBDC issue. So I'm hard pressed to. I wouldn't count on it. Let me put it to you that way. In fact, if anything, people should be pushing Biden now to free Ross just for political purposes, right? I mean, Biden uh, could make that happen in an instant, and then that would neutralize the vote getting attempt by Trump. So if people are dedicated to freeing Ross, then push it on all fronts, I say.
So were you at the Libertarian National Convention?
I was an alternate delegate, but I didn't sit in on any of the actual action. I did watch the last day of it, though. We were driving back, and I was listening. You know, I had YouTube on and was watching the show.
Okay, and what did you think of it? Like, I've seen a lot of people be very critical about it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that it probably was not the outcome. I don't know anybody that voted for Chase, to be completely honest with you. So
Okay.
it was a little bit surprising for me. Now, I mean, I've debated most of these guys at various points when I was trying to elevate the CBDC issue. So Chase and Rechtenwald and Tiermont and Josh Smith all signed my anti-CBDC pledge. So at least there's that. But I think that the process itself for the convention, they had a lot of people coming in and out. They had a lot of issues knowing whether the delegates were actually the right delegates. I mean, it was a very kind of complicated and slightly difficult to manage process, and I'm not sure if people are particularly happy about the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, from what I gathered on social media, a lot of people were very disappointed. I've been seeing a lot of memes like kind of mocking the Libertarian Party and things of that nature. Let's change topics though. I want to get into this CBDC thing because I originally had an hour and a half planned with you, but then I had like a change in schedule, so I only have an hour now. So I want to get into the meat and potatoes because the CBDC thing is probably the most pressing issue, and which is why I wanted to have you on the show. What is the problem with CBDCs? Why are you so opposed to them?
Well, I'm opposed to them just fundamentally based on what they represent. So they represent the opposite of Monero, or what even the Bitcoin white paper was originally supposed to be about. This is basically the gateway to digital tyranny. I mean, you're looking at, based on the way CBDCs have rolled out, it's a completely permissioned form of money. You have to get permission to use it. The government has complete control over monitoring your transactions. It's a programmable form of money, so they literally can determine what you can and cannot buy, when you can and cannot buy things, sell things, and can even censor you based on your political speech or a variety of other things. And if you actually look at the development of CBDCs, I mean, they're really the basis for a social credit system. And so that's always been the intention of it. And when you dig into who's behind it and how they're rolling them out, there's no doubt. I mean, if you ever hear anybody say it's about financial inclusion and about convenience, that's absolutely not the case. You can even be the head of the Bank for International Settlements talking about how this is about being able to monitor and control people's transactions. So to me, CBDCs are the single biggest threat to human liberty. And the reason that I came out and did what I did, because I was a political activist for a number of years, and then I basically went silent for about 5 years, is I started to look at a combination of what was going on with COVID tyranny, but then my friends, I live in New Hampshire, I'm part of the Free State Project. So I
Okay.
saw Ian Freeman was targeted, and I learned about crypto from Ian Freeman and Roger Ver back in 2012. So I saw that I even attended Ian's sentencing hearing. So I saw what was going on in terms of 5 different branches of the federal government kind of coming down on Ian, and then the Crypto Six. And Jeremy Kauffman, who's another free stater who started Library, his company was destroyed and targeted by the SEC. And I started to look into this because, I mean, I think Ian has maybe sold $10 million worth of Bitcoin over the years through various ATMs, which is not a lot. I mean, compared to the overall financial system, this isn't a huge, amount of transactions. And so, I started looking at, well, why is the DOJ specifically cracking down on pro-liberty crypto people? And I was shocked to learn how developed CBDCs are in the United States, how coordinated this has been going back to 2015, and even the tie-in with CBDCs and the hijacking of Bitcoin, which is what Roger wrote about in his book. Once I realized that, yeah, they hobbled BTC intentionally to make it not usable as cash, and the very same people that funded those changes or cementing that kind of viewpoint with BTC also funded all 3 US CBDCs. And so once I realized that, I realized, okay, yeah, they're literally coming for all of the crypto liberty people, which I've now demonstrated, conclusively, and can go into more detail on that. And they're doing it to close all of the exits so that they can usher in CBDCs. So to me, this is like, I say DEFCON 1, but this really should be the focus of everyone's attention, because once they put this in place, we'll never reverse it. And again, it will be used to crack down on all forms of political activism, because they can just simply shut off your money if they don't like what you have to say.
Yeah, I agree. And they've shown that they're malicious that way, and that they would love to financially deplatform dissenters. Like we've already seen it with PayPal and with Patreon and, these non-CBDC financial platforms. Whenever people say things that go against the grain to the popular narrative, they love to just shut off their access to finances. So with the CBDC thing, you mentioned that there's 3 US CBDC projects. Can you kind of break those down and give us like an overview of all 3 projects?
Yeah, I mean, there are at least 3, and then there are certain other ways that they could go about implementing a CBDC, for instance, using stable coins. But the bigger, the big 3 are, first, one of them is called Project Hamilton, and this is a project between the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston and the MIT Multimedia Lab. But one thing that you'll find with all 3 of these pilots that I talk about, MIT is right at the center of all of it. And the guy who actually spearheaded and pushed all of this is a guy named Joi Ito. And he ended up having to resign from MIT because it was discovered that he took money from Jeffrey Epstein. Not only for MIT related projects, but also for some of his private projects. And it turns out that Ito was a venture capitalist who invested in, amongst other things, Blockstream. So the connections here are fascinating in terms of the overlap. And, if you want to put your conspiracy hat on, I mean, these are not theories. It's open and documented that this same guy invested in all 3 of these CBDC pilots, invested in Blockstream, and funded SegWit and Lightning. So, I mean, these are all kind of undisputed facts. So Project Hamilton is a retail CBDC. So this is the CBDC designed to replace cash.
Okay.
And this project officially started really in 2019, but to understand that in general, this MIT group has been working on the concept of CBDCs going all the way back to 2015. So this particular project was started in 2019. And one thing that people will say to me, a lot of libertarians will say to me, they said, well, the government is incompetent. Look at, the Obamacare website. They'll never be able to implement a CBDC. The thing you have to understand is it's not the government implementing or developing the CBDC. It is the largest banks in the world funding the best developers in the world out of MIT and other places. In fact, some of the developers working on Project Hamilton are actually BTC core developers. There's one guy in particular named Corey Fields who worked on Lightning Network, worked on SegWit, and he is the co-author of the Project Hamilton US CBDC white paper. So they started this project in kind of 2019. They have published the results of 2 trials. So it's ongoing. So what they've demonstrated and what they've published publicly stops in 2022. Their retail CBDC can do 1.8 million transactions per second.
Okay.
So to put this in context, so BTC is at 7 transactions per second still. And, we could talk about Lightning, but realistically, Lightning, at least in the US, is being shut down because these big hubs are being shut down. So BTC is at 7. The Hamilton retail CBDC is now at 1.8 million transactions per second. And, it is not a permissionless system. So it is a system that will allow kind of surveillance from the top down. So when they concluded in 2022, they had a couple of technical things that they still wanted to work out, but for the most part, the tech was done. And they said in the white paper, which by the way was funded in part by Bill Gates, so you can't make this stuff up, but they said in the conclusion, the tech mostly works. Now it's just about marketing and legal, which to me says they're waiting for an emergency or for a crisis to roll it out. So Project Hamilton is the first of three. Project Cedar is a wholesale CBDC. So this is for banks moving large volume back and forth and for doing things like cross-border payments. And this CBDC pilot has the MIT group once again, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and then a bunch of large financial institutions in New York and the Bank for International Settlements. Which is actually a similar overlap for the third one. But anyway, they started that pilot last year, and from all accounts, it seems like they've been successful at figuring out how to do things regarding cross-border payments. The most dystopian of the three is this thing called regulated liability network. And the idea behind this is also out of the New York Fed with MIT and Bank for International Settlements. It's one ledger that tracks all CBDCs and all other digital assets. So imagine in the future, it's not going to be hard because they're already requiring you to, the IRS is now saying that next year you have to report your self-custody assets. And we know we have these very stringent know your customer anti-money laundering laws. So it's becoming more and more difficult, if not impossible, to actually buy crypto anywhere that's through any exchange or any official organization without being tracked with your identity. So in the future, through regulated liability network, all of your digital assets will also be on the same ledger as CBDCs, and they will be able to be monitored, tracked, and regulated by multiple third parties. So this is the one where kind of moving forward, if it's not bad enough that they can shut off your money based on your speech or behavior, they'll be able to shut off your ability to transfer and move your assets. And so this big movement now towards digitizing assets. I see people on my feed all the time, oh, BlackRock's getting into real world assets. This is great. Well, everything with this technology, with kind of blockchain has, a tyranny and freedom component. And when BlackRock is talking about tokenizing assets, it's the tyranny aspect of this. It's where all of your assets will be digitized and tracked and monitored by multiple third parties. So you won't have permissionless assets either. It will be a permission-based system and all tracked and all tied to CBDCs. And so I've been told by a developer that actually has worked on two of these CBDC projects that when they roll out Project Hamilton, they plan on rolling it out same time as regulated liability network. So right out of the gate. So this is why I believe what's happening to Ian and Roger and everybody else that's in prison right now in this entire crackdown that we're seeing, full court press on all sides with crypto is designed to shut off all of the exits so that they can roll out this new system. So those are the three. But then, you look at these bills. I've seen so many people excited about these bills that Congress is putting out in the last couple of weeks, and no one seems to be reading them. This is one of these things where if people haven't caught on right now, but by now, a bill title is usually the opposite of what actually it means when you read it. I mean, the Patriot Act, whatever it happens to be. Mm-hmm. So there's these bills that passed. There was one that passed, and again, none of these have been signed into law yet, but one of them gives control of blockchain policy to the Secretary of Commerce. So people are like, oh, great, the US is going to be innovating in blockchain. We're going to be competitive. This is great news. So the Secretary of Commerce, who is literally a member of the Trilateral Commission and is in Biden's administration, you have to understand, Biden has a very specific policy with respect to digital assets and CBDCs. Biden signed on March the 9th, 2022, Executive Order 14067. And so this authorized the government to use a whole of government approach to cracking down on digital assets. And it also authorized the US to explore CBDC. So people are now cheering the fact that, they view it as, well, we're taking away some power from the SEC and we're giving it to the Secretary of Commerce, but you're giving it to a Secretary of Commerce who is fully on board with globalism and technocracy who works in an administration that is actively pushing, as a matter of policy, CBDCs and cracking down on crypto. So that's a horrible development. These other bills people are celebrating are giving more control over crypto to banks. So the idea that banks can now custody crypto, or the idea that banks are going to be given basically control over stablecoins. This is not a pro-freedom development at all. This is just another backdoor way. There was even this anti-CBDC bill, which everybody's like, of course, because I'm the anti-CBDC guy, everybody's like, oh, isn't this great? First of all, the anti-CBDC bill just restates the current law. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Federal Reserve never had the right or the authority to create a CBDC without Congress anyway. So all this bill does is restate the power that Congress already has. So it's not exactly stopping anything. But when you drill into this, so the bill says, okay, the central bank can't create a CBDC. But if banks are given, if the banks own the Federal Reserve, and if the banks are given monopoly control over issuing stablecoins, and if stablecoins can be programmed, then basically bank issued stablecoins could be a backdoor way to actually implement CBDCs. So in essence, to look at who these people are that are sponsoring these bills, it turns out that they're all funded by the major banks. So this guy, Henry, who pushed this FIT 21 bill, all of his largest donors are the big banks, and he is retiring after this session. So in other words, he's going to go and take a job, lucrative job, working for the banks, implementing crypto after this term. None of this is a benefit to anybody that's in crypto for freedom purposes or wants peer-to-peer digital cash, or who's interested in the promotion of voluntary exchange. All this is more crony expansion of the role of banks within crypto. So I'm going to write up an article about this, because I need to kind of lay out what all of these bills are, because I've been shocked, even talking to libertarian people who are like, oh, this is great for crypto. Like, great for crypto. We have 4 exchanges essentially left in the US that are crypto exchanges. They're all being sued by the SEC. The SEC has taken over 130 enforcement actions. People might talk about XRP or whatever. The SEC has won 99% of their cases. The CFTC has cracked down on DeFi. You have coin mixing services that are gone, and the people are now in cages. You have people like Roger and Ian who literally did nothing wrong but promote voluntary interaction and the use of cryptocurrencies that are in prison. And so there's no good news. I guess the question I would say is, what do we have left, right? We've lost almost everything. The IRS is going to require that you report your self-custody crypto. The FBI has come out and said, if you buy your crypto through a service that isn't a registered money transmission service, and your coins were pooled with criminal activity, we can claw back your coins as well. So it's basically hard to buy crypto. If you buy it, you're going to be KYC'd, and they're doing everything that they can to shut down on anything privacy related, and they're throwing people in cages. And the legislation that they're passing gives more control to the banks. And so we're not winning. And, this idea that Trump comes out and says, oh, he's going to be pro Bitcoin, again, whatever that means, right? If this is more like this concept of ETFs, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin was supposed to be peer-to-peer digital cash that you could use without third parties. What do we have now? We have a situation where hedge funds who get a fee for managing people's money are investing in ETFs like BlackRock, who are collecting a fee, who don't even hold the crypto themselves. They use Coinbase. So now we have a situation where there are 3 layers of middlemen. The people buying into these financial instruments never touch the Bitcoin. When they sell their ETF, they don't get paid in Bitcoin. And now it's basically making it very easy for the government, if they decided to actually confiscate Bitcoin, they could do it very easily through ETFs and through these regulated financial entities. And so we've kind of lost the plot here entirely, with the idea that people are investing in digital currencies that are not being used through all of these third-party intermediaries. And now we're at a point in time where only 1% of Americans are using crypto for day-to-day transactions, which is down from 2%, and only 7% of Americans even own crypto. So the entire space is actually declining despite whatever people get excited about when they see the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think the number go up thing is a massive honeypot too, because like they're pumping people's bags in fiat, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of Bitcoin. And people are just hodling, they're not using their Bitcoin, and they've kind of made Bitcoin unusable for like peer-to-peer purchases and stuff like that, like with prohibitively high fees. So right now, like I kind of see personally like Bitcoin as a failed project. I'm looking elsewhere for peer-to-peer cash. One of the places would be Monero, but like the whole privacy coin like ecosystem in crypto right now is like the most important sector, because without privacy, like all of these like Ethereum, Bitcoin, Litecoin, like whatever, all these transparent blockchains can be repurposed and turned into CBDCs, surveillance coins and this and that. So like I think privacy coins right now are super important. I think decentralized exchanges are super important. I think decentralized marketplaces where people can buy and sell goods and services are super important. I don't think there's enough effort going into this. Like people are being sidetracked with, their Bitcoin pumping or these ridiculous meme coins pumping like 10,000%. And I feel like people losing the plot is super accurate. We heard a lot of fanfare about this FedNow, like interbank payment system that they rolled out. I think it was like last August or something like that. How does FedNow fit into this CBDC thing?
Well, FedNow is not itself a CBDC, but it's more of an infrastructure that you could put a CBDC on because it's not particularly programmable. But yeah, they launched it in July of last year. And I mean, essentially, it's exactly what you said. It's a real-time payment system that allows participating banks to instantly and nearly, free transactions back and forth. And this is big from the standpoint of, so when I got my first Bitcoin in 2012, I immediately understood, because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company in the mid 90s doing e-commerce. And so I've dealt with payment processors and all of the frustration with banks and everything else. And so I understood when I got my first Bitcoin that, wow, this is actually better money. It's faster, cheaper, and there's nobody in between. And so Bitcoin was a better form of money. Even if you take out the separation of money and state aspect of it, it was actually technologically a better offering. But the banks have actually caught up, and they've actually way out innovated BTC. And so it used to be that if you send somebody a check and they're in a different state, I mean, it would take in a different bank, it could take 7 to 10 days for that check to clear. Even direct deposit isn't instant. Usually it takes 3 days for direct deposit to clear. When you send a wire transfer, it might cost $40 and it may get there the same day, but probably the next day if you don't hit these, things. And so FedNow basically levels that playing field. So now all of a sudden there's no 7 to 10 days. There's no $40 fees. This is now instant payment. This actually is a direct swipe at Visa, MasterCard, Venmo, Zelle. I mean, if you actually think about what could be done with that. Now, the take-up has not been as big as people thought, but people aren't thinking about how this is being used. So one of the biggest applications of FedNow is just take, for example, payroll for federal employees, right? So now you actually think about how much, what money's moving on a large basis on a regular period of time. Well, payroll is a huge part of it. So payroll is something that all of the large banks are participating in, federal government employees. And so now all of a sudden that is on this system. And so then you can take this FedNow system and then add what CBDC adds to it is programmability. So there's nothing particularly sophisticated about FedNow. It's just they finally updated and are using modern technology and not 40-year-old technology for transferring payments. The CBDCs add a level of programmability on top of that. And so that's how those play out. But there's an interesting thing about FedNow that people don't realize, and it speaks to the tactics. I think everybody in crypto should be worried about what's going on with traditional finance and what's going on with CBDCs. And my fear is, after being in this space for a long time, is that most people only look at the competitive landscape as within the crypto space.
Yeah.
That's the entire universe. So it's like my coin versus your coin. And it's like, well, okay, well, when I got my first Bitcoin, Venmo, Zelle, Google Pay, Apple Pay, none of these things existed. FedNow didn't exist. And then soon we have X payments coming up, which I think is going to be a great UI. I'm sure whatever Elon rolls out, we should be worried about it because he's modeling everything off of WeChat, and basically, which is a key component of the Chinese social credit system. And so Elon is rolling out something that is not. It is not a pro-freedom endpoint here. I mean, I'm already seeing today, I get a message that says if I want to continue to get payment, I have to submit my details to an Israeli
I saw that
intelligence company. And it's like, okay, well, so what happened? Where are we going here? And actually, you can see what the roadmap is. And so, but with FedNow, when those 4 banks collapsed last year, Silicon Valley, First Republic, Silvergate, and Signature Bank, what people don't realize is Signature Bank and Silvergate actually had offerings that were competitive to FedNow.
Okay.
They actually had systems for onboarding people to crypto through using fiat in a way that was basically instantaneous and free. So they actually had developed a technological system that competed with FedNow. And I would argue, if you dig into it, that the Federal Reserve and the SEC caused a run on those banks. And when they collapsed, in particular for Signature Bank, the terms and conditions were whoever bought that bank had to agree to not get into crypto for 5 years. So it ended up Bank of New York Mellon bought this Signature Bank, and they can't even get back into crypto for 5 years. So to me, it was a clear orchestration. So these guys will use absolute bully tactics. They will, they will engineer runs on the bank. They will manipulate the legal process. So we have to understand that we're dealing with people. They're not as stupid as I think the Liberty community and the crypto community tends to think that these guys are stupid, or that somehow they might play by the rules. And they've demonstrated that they aren't, and they haven't. To your point about, privacy coins, my viewpoint is, and so, I ran for president with, I'm wearing my Roger Ver shirt now, but I usually have my political campaign was bank run now, halt CBDCs, stop World War III and the Fed. I've been actually encouraging people to exit fiat as the way to stop all of these things. And I've been going around the country. So I wrote this book, The Final Countdown, which goes into everything that we're talking about today. I explain where CBDCs come from, the global state, what's motivating it, who's behind it. I talk about the inevitable collapse of fiat. The dollar is finished. It's just a matter of time. All fiat currencies fail. And in the back half, I tell people how to actually go and acquire to start living off since 20. I'll tell you, it's become more difficult over time. It's just in the last 2 years, it's actually become more difficult. And so until you've actually lived off of crypto, people don't understand what the real challenges are. We have to come up with a solution now that is actually a better product than what traditional finance has with things like Venmo and Apple Pay. And we have to have something that's competitive with CBDCs, because all of the people that are in crypto for the ideological reasons and for freedom and for voluntary exchange, those people are already in. And right now, total, that's 1% of Americans actually using that to buy and sell things. So we need to come up with a better solution. And what I've actually launched this project, it's on my site, daylightfreedom.org, to create an open source point of sale system that works with multiple cryptos, also gold and silver. And I'll get into this in a second. But in order to be competitive, we have to have a combined transaction per second, a combined throughput that can compete with Visa and MasterCard. And no individual coin, unfortunately, has that. So combined, this is why we need multiple coins. We also need to have coins that are cheaper. I mean, we need sub 1 cent transactions. So Ethereum, BTC are not part of the solution. I've signed up merchants to accept crypto and over the years. And here's what I found. And when you actually go through and you'll see these maps that say this company takes crypto, they probably don't. If you actually go to those stores, what you'll find is what happened is at some point in time, years ago, an activist went to the business owner and said, hey, this is cool. Would you like to take crypto? And the business owner said, yeah, that would be great. And chances are whatever the point of sale system was no longer exists. There was no way to train employees on how to actually continue to accept this. I mean, I'm in New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, and one of the benefits here is there are a lot of people. I can use gold backs, and I can actually do direct peer-to-peer commerce here. But even still, the merchants here that take crypto directly has dropped off actually just since 2017, since the whole issue with the block size wars. So we need a combined set of coins that get the right transaction per second, that have low fees. And gold and silver is also I've been moving more into gold and silver, surprisingly, because I was exclusively crypto. But have you seen these gold backs?
Yeah, those are awesome. I wish we had them out here where I live.
So gold backs are and tokenized gold and silver. So I have an account with gold backs that I can log into. I can buy gold, silver, and gold backs. I can move it around. I can actually load a debit card I can pawn my own gold and silver to myself, so I don't have to pay capital gains tax.
Okay.
So I can basically I can use gold and silver as a store of value and then load it onto a debit card. And I can physically redeem the metals. So, because the risk with part of this is if I'm obviously using the debit card or I'm keeping some of the stuff online, then there's a custody risk, which I never put more than a month or two worth of value, knowing that it could be confiscated or something bad could happen. But I like the idea of, through a point of sale system, allowing people to use crypto, allowing people to use tokenized gold and silver that they can then maybe redeem through ATMs or some of these other systems, so that we're providing the merchant with an actual solution. Because one of the problems is it's like, okay, if you say, I like Monero, I use Zcash, I use all of it. But if I'm approaching a merchant in the town that I'm in New Hampshire, well, how many people within a 20-mile radius have Monero? Like, realistically, if I were trying to sell a single coin solution, it's not enough buying power to get them to make the investment to install the point of sale. So what I'm trying to do is build this comprehensive system that has multiple coins and gold and silver, so that we can have a truly alternative payment system to all of fiat. And I've been going around the country doing these 4-hour workshops based on my book. And you learn so much. I was in San Jose, California, a couple of weeks ago with 100 people in the room, right? And so what I do is I tell people about CBDCs and all this other stuff and kind of the background on crypto, but then I give them a gold back, I give them a 1/5 of an ounce round of silver, and then I give them crypto. I try to onboard them to crypto. And, I try to use the easiest solution, something that I've used. I've used the Exodus wallet, which is pretty straightforward. And we had a faucet, somebody created a faucet for us and everything else. But I mean, I've even got the recording of it. People instantly understand gold back. And I'd say only half the people in the room were able to get the Exodus wallet installed and to use the faucet. And there's not been enough focus on user experience. And so we have to make this super simple for everybody. One of the things that drives me nuts about BTC and Lightning, if I hear another person say, well, just run your own Lightning node, or it works on my machine. It's like, money cannot be technically complicated to use. Everybody should be able to use it. I wrote this book for a boomer with no technical expertise to be able to read the book and then actually take the steps necessary to obtain their own self-custody crypto. And I started doing the workshops because I realized that even though they'd read the book, there's that much fear. So I actually wanted to walk them through the process in person, and I'm walking them through the process in person and then explaining how I live off of crypto. So living off of crypto means maybe 20% of the time I'm doing direct transactions because I'm in New Hampshire. So most people don't even have that available. The rest of the time you're buying gift cards and you're buying debit cards, or you're using debit cards. Well, the truth is those things can be shut down. That's not true peer-to-peer commerce, right? I mean, if all of a sudden that in fact that has been cut off. I used to use BitPay as my primary fiat solution, right? I'd use BCH. Well, so all of a sudden when these banks failed, unrelated to the bank failures themselves, BitPay's banking partner they dissolved that relationship and they haven't restored it. It was supposed to be restored late last year, and here we are in the middle of this year. So now I have to convert from one coin to another and use another debit card if I'm traveling and I don't have any ability to do direct peer-to-peer. So it's in doing these workshops where I realized, yeah, we're not going to be able to onboard people quickly if I have to give them like one of those, it looks like a tinfoil hat chart to show people how you can live off of crypto. Well, you can pay this bill here, you can do this here, you can use this service, but by the way, these services might not exist in 90 days. It's really hard to make that case. And so that's why I concluded that we need this open source point of sale, and it has to be open source. This is why I'm trying to figure out how to fund it, because it can't be owned by a central entity, and it can't be something you have to use through the App Store, because those two things will centralize choke points. And even the POS system that people used in New Hampshire, the folks running that kind of left when Ian and others were targeted by the FBI. And so we need an open source solution. But so to me, yes, we need privacy, but if we don't have an overall solution that is fast enough and scalable enough and easy enough to use, it doesn't even matter if you have a privacy coin, because you won't, when they implement CBDC, you won't have anybody in your local area to trade with. It won't actually be by itself something that you can use to stave off CBDCs.
Now, assuming you do successfully build this open source point of sale system, like, aren't we still vulnerable to KYC laws? Like, I know like the KYC laws were passed under false pretenses, like with the Patriot Act and all that, and they keep renewing them. So we've had like 20 years of financial surveillance. It's to the point where like law-abiding citizens like have accepted it as normal, like this violation and invasive collection of their privacy. Like, even if we build this parallel system, like, won't we still fall under KYC and financial surveillance?
Well, so the point of sale system is just a point of sale system. So I'm not building into the point of sale system the ability to buy crypto. So this is something for merchant to accept crypto. I don't have a solution for the
But I
other
mean,
side,
even debit cards or a gold, like a debit card you could load with gold, you still have to send them like your ID, like an electricity bill or something like that, right?
Well, some of these are at early stages where you might not have to do that, but you will, right? So you will have to. So that's a perfect point. And so that's always that's a race against time. So there's another service that you can use that doesn't currently have the full KYC thing, where you can actually buy tokenized gold and silver and use tokenized gold and silver to buy crypto, right? But that is a temporary solution. I think that. So this is all about speed and scale. Like if we don't get people to do this within the next 6 months, I think all of crypto's finished. That's actually how bad I think that the situation is. And I think it's going to come down to, and this is the challenge with this, people are going to have to use DEXs. I am really interested right now. I've been exploring a company called ZANO. And
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with
I did
them.
an interview with Mr. Quibbs, the head of marketing for ZANO.
So I'm intrigued by what they're doing in terms of privacy tokens and a complete privacy platform. It's the opposite of regulated liability network, right? And so it's kind of like the Monero for tokenization, but they're also building a P2P platform and a DEX that's going to allow you to actually exchange coins in a way that protects privacy. And I think that's probably going to have to be something like that at scale is going to be required. The problem is, if you look at it, most of these coins, the big ones, most of the coins have already been mined, right? So if you look at Bitcoin and BCH and everything else, most of the coins that exist are already out there, and most people are hodling them. So like, we have to change behavior. The only way to get this stuff into the system is if people start using it instead of hoarding it. And this store value narrative won't work, and that's a threat to all of this, right? This is a threat to all of these. And so because one way you could get around this is if people start using it, then that's how they will obtain it. You don't have to go through I can buy something from my local merchant without having to be KYC'd. I can pay them in crypto without going through a KYC process. But what that means is that the people that currently have crypto need to start using it for day-to-day commerce, and unfortunately they're not. That's actually dropping off even more. But I think in part it's because there's a lack of point of sale system for crypto. There have been point of sale systems up here. There's one called AnyPay, which I might actually fork AnyPay. That might actually be the way that I accelerate this, because they've now made it open source.
Okay.
But BitPay is one of the largest, if not the largest, merchant point of sale system. They're not accepting new merchants. So if you go to their website right now, they're not accepting anybody new. So we're in a complete holding pattern right now. If you were a business and you wanted to accept crypto right now, there are no real solutions for you. BitPay isn't allowing anything new. There aren't any other point of sale options. And again, if you look at it from the perspective of the business owner, because I've talked to a lot of business owners, they need something that's simple, scalable, that has low fees. They're not interested in playing around with 20,000 coins. They're not interested in DeFi. They're not interested in, like all of the stuff that we have. And I'm not saying that these things are bad. I'm not anti-DeFi, but what I'm saying is, having gone to 20 states and talked to people that are outside of crypto, and knowing that in order for this to work, it has to be a solution that competes with the existing system, the overwhelming majority of people find all of the user interfaces and all of the offerings to be unusable and so daunting that it's not even worth trying. And I think that within crypto, most people think some of this stuff is, I like to say, it's 20-year-old devs designing user interfaces for other 20-year-old devs, and that's not a solution for money, for peer-to-peer cash for the world.
What do you think about the volatility in crypto, like having a negative impact on merchant acceptance, and then also just like the fees being ridiculous on many of the most popular blockchains?
So in my book and in my talks, what I say to people is, and again, because it's based on my own experience. So I didn't start out, no one's paying me. I'm not being paid by any coin. I've never been paid by any project. And in fact, every project that I support is, with exception of one, is open source and didn't raise any money anyway. So I only look for projects. So BCH, Litecoin, Monero, Zcash, Dash, and Ravencoin are the only coins that I use or that I recommend, because they're the only ones that actually have fees that are competitive. You can't use Ethereum or BTC for transactions, period. It's not a retail proposition at all. But I also remove, and I have Dash in there only because they've actually done a lot for retail penetration. So in the area that I'm in New Hampshire, a lot of I can actually get a haircut directly paying Dash. There are businesses that I can go to that accept Dash directly.
Yeah, they've been present in New Hampshire for a long, long time. Like I remember seeing PorcFest in 2016, and there was Dash people there, buying and selling stuff for Dash.
Yeah, so that's it. So it's only that list that I recommend. But there are a couple points that you brought up that are very interesting. One is, so the taxation is an issue. The volatility is an issue, as is taxation, right? So you have to pay capital gains on this stuff, and I get people all the time saying, well, that's a big issue. And I mean, in my experience, I've held crypto long enough that I'm always dealing with long-term capital gains, and depending upon what the year is, I mean, so this is just a little history of what it's like living on crypto, right? So it's something that I've kind of learned as well with exercise in life in general. I mean, I think society tries to push us into a box where everything is 9 to 5 and everything is exertion at a consistent level, right? But that's not really how we even perform biologically. We perform better doing sprints and then having kind of longer periods of recovery. That's actually more of a natural pattern. That's actually better for our health and our mind. Living off crypto is kind of like that. So when coin prices are down, so I get my burn rate down to as little as possible. And when crypto prices are down, I'm not spending a lot. And then when crypto prices are up, then that's when I'll make capital expenditures, right? It's like, okay, well, now I'm going to buy my computer. I'm going to upgrade all my stuff, and I'm going to do this and this. And, I've gotten used to that, but there is some, it's certainly not for everyone. And it is actually a big risk factor to crypto in general. So there have been years where I've made no money, right? There's no capital gains whatsoever. It's actually a loss, and you can only carry forward, I think, $3,000 worth of losses. And then other years where it is what it is. This is why I've actually been moving more towards, I like this idea of tokenized gold and silver. And one thing that I'm an advisor to this group called Citizens for Sound Money. There's a
Okay.
big movement at the state level to make gold and silver legal tender. So it's legal tender already in 4 states. Utah was the first, Arkansas and Wyoming, I think, and one other. And so in these cases, you actually don't even have to pay. It's not a capital gains type of situation. You don't have to pay sales tax. You don't have to deal with barter laws. And 24 states are now pursuing this in the U.S. So I'm actually more intrigued by tokenized gold and silver. And I've actually moved more towards 50-50 gold and silver, 50% crypto for the reasons that you just described. It's the volatility and then the crackdown part of it. But there are risks with that as well, which is why, like, I would love to make it so that a merchant. So I've used something called Now Payments. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not. I don't think so.
So it's a service. I think they're based in Europe, but I've used it as kind of to accept payments for crypto, and I've been using it for years. I used it for my presidential campaign. I've used various things throughout the years, and what it does is it allows you to accept any crypto you want, but you pick your reference currency. So if I want BCH or Monero, it will actually convert everything that comes in to whatever my reference currency is.
Okay.
And so I can actually see this is something I'm contemplating right now with this point of sale system, is being able to do something like that, but where the merchant can actually have the tokenized gold, so they can basically convert the cryptos that they're receiving into, it could be a currency of their choice, but also making gold and silver an option, because they are better stores of value over the long period of time. So you're not going to get 100x. Well, who knows with what's going on now, but you're not going to get 100x on gold or silver, but you're also not going to get negative 80%, right? And so to me, that's kind of an interesting, I'm very intrigued by the intersection of tokenized gold and silver and crypto, and even how to tie those things together. So they've just started rolling out gold-backed ATMs. So imagine a future where you've got, you have an account where it's not an actual debit card, but it's a gold-backed account. And so your point of sale system, you're taking multiple currencies, including crypto, it's converting it to an online account that you can then go to an ATM and actually pull out physical gold backs. I think the intersection of physical cash, tokenized gold and silver, and crypto is potentially a home run. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the next 6 weeks trying to see if I can get people on board with that idea.
With this tokenized gold and silver that you keep mentioning, like, which projects are you looking at specifically?
So I'm looking at, the Alpine Gold Company is one of them. And when you start, so they're heavy behind these state-based gold backs. And
Okay.
Utah was the first state to make gold and silver legal tender. And so they are way on the cutting edge of everything. Now, I don't like the fact that, again, they're vaulting this stuff. Again, you can take it in your physical possession, but for the most part, if you're using the online system, you're counting on their vaulted solution. But Utah has the best laws in terms of anti-confiscation from the federal government. I mean, they really are light years ahead. So Alpine has been involved in that from the very beginning. And in fact, I have an account that I log into. It's a United Precious Metals Associate UPMA account that I log into. And when I log into that account, it's actually, they set up a trust. So all of my assets are actually not even in my own individual name. It's in the name of a trust so that it can be protected against bankruptcy and a whole variety of other things. And I can move coins around. You can even move 401ks into this system, and then they vault it. Another one that I'm looking at is Kinesis Metals, and I've just started playing around with that as well. That's the service that you can buy tokenized gold and silver, and they have vaults all over the world actually, and they mint their own coins. It's a fairly decent sized operation, and then they actually have an interface where you can buy and sell crypto with tokenized gold and silver. And it's the same model. You can take physical possession. They don't have a debit card yet or some of these other features, but my understanding is that they're working on some pretty innovative things as well. So those are two that I'm pursuing and actively playing with. I have others on the list, but I mean, honestly, if somebody's tokenized on Ethereum, I think that's going to be problematic. So there are a lot of the gold tokenization projects have been on Ethereum. I'm also talking to Glint. So I'm going to do a full, and I'm not, by the way, I'm trying to build a platform. So I'm not trying to pick winners. I just, if you meet the minimum criteria, which you do need to meet minimum criteria. Again, the merchant doesn't want 20,000 choices. The merchant wants the subset of choices that are competitive with what they're dealing with fiat. That's actually what they're looking for. And the same is true with gold and silver as well. So, but Kinesis and Alpine are the two big ones right now, and I'm going to continue casting a broader net. And if anybody in your audience has any ideas, this is again an area that I've really started accelerating my focus on in the last 90 days. But part of it is, again, crypto. It's become very difficult to live off of crypto. Again, when BitPay, I had my BitPay card for 4 years or something like that. And I mean, they had to switch partners. It went from Visa to MasterCard. They did it, but it was pretty reliable. And when it got cut off, I had 8 days of notice. That was it. I got a notice. 8 days, this card is gone, right? So now I have a whole bunch of these debit cards, different services. Some of them I use, some of them I don't. It's like, here's Fold, here's Spritz Finance, here's all this other stuff. And I realized, other than me, no one else is going to want to do this. I mean, I'm willing, you know what I mean? Like, I'm willing to do this because I want the separation of money and state, and I'm willing to test these things out, but it's not a mass market solution. So we have to build that solution. And so I'm hoping the Monero community and everybody gets behind this, because we need because I know everybody likes their crypto. And I'm like, guys, if we don't have, the merchant needs a complete solution. And whether on technical points yours might be better, it's not an overall solution for a merchant, and it's not an overall solution. This is just where we are, and this is a function of frankly, the hijacking of Bitcoin. We wouldn't have Ethereum. We wouldn't have any of this had what happened in 2015 not happened. Nevertheless, here we are, and we were at that early adopter phase, and then it got fragmented into 20,000 different pieces, and now we're trying to figure out how to come up with a solution, even though those 20,000 are fighting each other. And if we don't get some kind of unity around, the P2P digital cash side of things, again, the prospects look really bleak. But I also say this with precious metal, because everybody's like, oh, shiny rocks versus this and this. It's like, we all need to work together on a sound money solution. And I think if I can talk to people on both sides. And so there's openness to talk about this now, but I just, I want to get this POS system out by October. And because if it's not, and I don't even know, that might even be too late. I've been worried that they're going to try to implement CBDCs before this election. This is why when I ran for president and wrote the book, and I've written articles about this that are in Zero Hedge, I'm like, guys, they might try to do this before the election. It is stated government policy. The tech is much further than anyone thinks.
Yeah.
And the fact that candidates are coming out now and saying, so I spent a lot of time with Vivek. He read my book. I had multiple conversations with him because he was in New Hampshire, and he pushed Trump to come out against CBDCs because it was in New Hampshire and it was a contested primary. And Vivek knew we had a big, Liberty crowd. So I think that, but I don't want that to work against us in the sense that now people are complacent. People are saying, well, Trump said he's going to stop CBDCs. You asked me whether I think he'll pardon Ross. I hope so, but I wouldn't count on it. And I also wouldn't count on him. I wouldn't count on, Biden not implementing CBDCs before the election. And even if Trump does win the election, whether if we have another emergency, he clearly went along with the CARES Act. If we have another emergency, I think under terrorism and money laundering, he'd probably be persuaded to put in a CBDC as well, or a backdoor CBDC through stablecoin. So I don't trust it. The only way out is an alternative solution. And actually, even to that point, fiat is already bad. I mean, all of the things that people are worried about with CBDCs, we actually already have. They're already shutting down bank accounts. I did an analysis of the terms of service of the 4 major banks of Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Citi, and Bank of America. And the bank can cancel your account without any reason. They can change fees at their discretion. They can sell or give away your data without your consent, which they are already doing. Either you're working with the IRS using AI to analyze your transactions, and they can change the terms without your consent.
Unilaterally.
Unilaterally. So fiat is already bad. Fiat is already surveillance money. You should not want to be in fiat as it stands. CBDC is just worse. It's just programmability and then a hook into social credit scores. But make no mistake, nobody should want to remain in the current situation. And if they understood that banks have no reserve requirements anymore and that the money's backed by nothing and that
And
all
it's
of the
not even
asset
yours. Like they changed the laws in like 2010, like around the Cypress haircut, like that when you deposit money, you are like now an unsecured creditor and you're like the last in line. So it's like actually their money. It's not even your money.
it's not your money. So if people are like, well, it's already, yeah, it is already bad. Get out of fiat because you get out of fiat. But CBDCs are much worse. And we can't stop the fact that they'll use an emergency.
Yeah, what do
And
you
the
think
fact
about this like cyber polygon, like World Economic Forum? Like they've been doing drills. Like before the pandemic, they did that event 201 thing. They've been doing a cyber attack one called Cyber Polygon. I believe like if they're going to roll out CBDCs, they're going to need to roll out like the ID system at the same time, and then what was it, the regulated liability network? Yeah. So
regulated
like,
liability.
do you think they're going to like do like some false flag cyber attack and then like say everybody needs like a mandatory online ID and we're rolling out this and that and the other?
Yeah, I think whether it's a cyber attack or a terrorist attack, I mean, there are so many things that are going on right now. But yeah, I think that that's the most probable, right? They're not going to, people are like, well, they'll try to roll it out with incentives. No, they'll bring it out in an emergency. They'll use fear. And most people will go for it. Just like, we got the Patriot Act 45 days after 9/11. We got TARP 18 days after Lehman Brothers collapsed. And we got the $2.2 million CARES Act 16 days after COVID was declared a pandemic on a voice vote. That's how they'll roll out CBDCs. And the politicians will say, well, if we didn't do this, everyone would die. And it'll be, terrorism and cyber attacks and everything else. And that's the problem is that formula always works. So we can't change the fact that there's going to be an emergency. We can't change the fact that fear will be the reaction. The only thing we can do is have an alternative so that at that moment in time, so it's either use the CBDC or use this alternative system that has multiple coins and precious metals and that is competitive from a cost and scalability perspective. To me, that's the one shot we have left. And I'm not saying it's high probability, but I'm all in. I've stopped everything that I'm doing to just warn people about CBDCs and now to try to build this point of sale system. Even if the odds are low, it's as long as it's not zero, it's worth a shot.
Amazing. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Like I have to call it quits here. Unfortunately, I had like another meeting that got rescheduled. But before I let you go, can you tell people where they can find your book, how they can attend one of your workshops, where they can read your writing, your articles, your blog posts?
Sure. You can find me at, I just launched this last week, daylightfreedom.org. It's a 501c3 that my wife and I started that's all about promoting free will, decentralization, those kinds of things. And you can learn about kind of everything, the books, the webinars, the workshops, and even this point of sale system. And I'm also a fellow at the Brownstone Institute. So you can check out brownstone.org. And if you're not familiar with Brownstone, they've been fighting lockdowns and mandates and the censorship industrial complex that basically when everyone else, all the other liberty groups fell short, this group was started to kind of fill in the gap. So that's where I'm doing a lot of my writing.
Thanks again for coming on the show, man. It was a pleasure to talk about CBDCs with you. I'd like to have you back on at some point, I don't know, in the next few months so that we can follow up and then maybe even get a longer interview so we could talk about more stuff.
Would love to. Yeah, let me know.
Okay, cool.